Let's move right into Who's Who. Here the chief host is Mr. Sonny Segal, who's the CIO of Montgomery County, Maryland. Let's meet Mr. Segal alongside his guest of honor today.
Welcome to the Who's Who show. This is your host, Sonny Segal. Today my guest is Dr. Nishi Chawla. She is an academician and a writer. She has 5 collections of poetry, 2 novels, and 6 plays to her credit. She has just completed writing her 6th volume of poetry titled From Immigrant Diaries. Dr. Chawla holds a PhD in English from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. She also has a 2-year postdoctoral degree at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore after teaching for nearly 20 years as a tenured professor of English at Delhi University. In India, she had migrated with her family to a suburb of Washington, D.C. She taught at the University of Maryland from 1999 until 2014. She is now on the faculty of Thomas Edison State University in New Jersey. Dr. Chawla's plays get staged both in the U.S. and in India. Draupadi's Arranged Marriage was staged here in the nation's capital, and last year her play Indira was staged in New Delhi. The theater group plans to stage her plays again in New Delhi. Dr. Chawla, welcome to the Who's Who show.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you back. It was in actually the year 2016 that you were on the show, and then we talked about some wonderful poetry that you had written.
Thank you.
And since then, I actually have had the good fortune to be at one of your plays that was staged most recently, Draupadi's Arranged Marriage. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
The people I spoke with, and there were over 400 people in attendance that day, and some others from my friends and family that we talked about. I mean, they cannot stop talking about it. So your take on Draupadi's, and the historical events around that was wonderful.
I feel so humbled and so honored. Thank you so much.
So what was your inspiration in writing this play?
Mr. Segal, it's very difficult for a writer to kind of pin down or identify actual trigger points which you describe as inspiration. I've always been very interested in women's rights, and most of my writings are very feminist. So Draupadi is an unfortunate but of course a very fascinating figure in the Indian epic, the Mahabharata. She was doomed to marry 5 brothers, and
all at one time.
All at the one time, yes. So I did combine and juxtapose the mythological tropes and position them, positioned the mythological tropes with the position of women across the globe in our modern, contemporary times.
So relevant to the present times as well.
So that is what I wanted to do, and I wanted to interrogate and examine the institution of arranged marriage. I also wanted to, of course, examine, how far ahead have we as women come in the 20th or 21st century, and therefore I tried to kind of bring together certain relevant tropes, certain relevant situations, and also examine marriage as a economic and social barter system. So that was my take, and well, if you please, my inspiration point for the play.
Mm-hmm. And so is there an objective that you hope to achieve in telling this story?
I don't really have any social agenda, but I do like to invest my own poetic pen, my dramatic pen in the palette of social colors. I look around me, I like to empathize, I like to think and interrogate with myself, with my own conscience, my own consciousness also as a woman. So I guess, that is perhaps the point why I kind of write what I write, or I do what I do. There's no specific political or social agenda, when a writer inhabits that lonely space and tries to kind of, project one's own thought process into what one writes.
Yes, and in writing the script, and then as it was rendered on
Yes.
stage,
Yes.
there were quite a few very intricate dialogues, that
Yes.
were going on between between Draupadi and the five brothers, and she navigated very craftily, very carefully too.
Yes.
So in your writing of the plays, you actually have the script, the dialogue scripted?
Well, this is all mythological. Draupadi is a mythological figure. There's no historical documentation of her life, apart from, of course, whatever one has. It's been reimagined time and again, re-rendered time and again. So, we've all heard about this term called method acting, but there's method writing also. One never talks about method writing. And I think when I like to kind of, write on a particular subject, on a particular person like Draupadi, a human being perhaps in historical come mythological times, then I'm kind of, transferring myself into her consciousness and looking at it from, her point of view. So, of course, the writer, the playwright is, of course, the invisible brain behind the entire project. A play definitely inhabits a very social space. A writer is nothing, a playwright is nothing without, good actors, without the director, without the stage manager, all of whom, so it's a kind of collaborative effort. But the invisible brain behind it is, of course, the mind, the vision of the writer, the playwright. And here I am kind of trying to enter into the consciousness of this mythological figure, Draupadi, and trying to write my own, drama in my own mental space, my brain space. That's what I do. Thank you.
So a play of that type to be on stage and to be performed in India has its own implications. In other words, there it would get a lot of
Absolutely.
Conversation.
Absolutely.
And so which of your plays has been performed in India?
Well, two of my plays have already been performed. They've been staged by a very well-known theatre group and an award-winning theatre actor who's just an amazing, amazing director in her own right, Shilpi Marwaha. She has staged Indira as well just recently, on the 29th of January 2019 as we speak, and also Kasturba versus Gandhi. And the production quality, the performance of all the actors, how it was put together, the costumes, the stage set, my God, it was just beyond, it was mind-blowing. It was very professionally done. And of course, the dialogue it generates, all of that is something, that we dream of as writers.
Yes, and is Bollywood considering making a movie, perhaps?
I hope not. When you venture into the space of theatre, you want to separate and sever completely from, the flashy world of Bollywood. So, theatre is a very ancient classical art, and it is respected by a tiny minority. The visual media, of course, is something, it's the buzzword, and, it kind of is the obsessive space-time of people in our modern world. Theatre is, something very traditional, and it has a very small niche. I just want to stay within that narrow space.
However, a movie may not be out of the question. We'll see. And now you have written 5 collections of poetry.
Yes.
And you're actually writing another.
I have finished writing. I have completed writing.
Is it okay to share that? Or
thank you. Yes.
Yes?
Certainly.
Oh, please do.
You're talking about my my poetry.
Yes.
Well, I've written 5 volumes of poetry, and I kind of wanted to make it more global, so I have written my manuscript. About 100-odd poems is, titled From Immigrant Diaries. So I enter again into the consciousness of various immigrants and across the globe. I have expanded, so to say, my space, my imaginative vision, and look at the dilemmas, existential situations, emotions, experiences of immigrants across the globe. So I enjoy what I've been doing, and it takes a lot. It's kind of, it wrenches the soul out of you when you write poetry. And I'm looking for a publisher now. Of course, I've sent it to various publication houses, and I hope I can get it published sometime.
Yes, migration, immigration are
Yes.
also, it is so much in the news today,
Yes.
and it is so much what humanity is going through right now.
Absolutely.
And when you describe that to be at times a heart-rending, and at times actually stories of heroism almost, right? People surviving this is amazing.
Yes, the survival
It's amazing.
mechanisms, yes, various immigrants have adopted is something one, has to look at it from a very personal space.
Yes, thank you for doing that, because often that subject and the plight of the immigrant is not captured, by literary figures. Now you are actually a professor of English. Is that right, at the university?
Yes.
Or universities? How do you balance your academic commitment, to being a writer and a poet?
I think I became an academician. I call myself an accidental academician. I always wanted to become a writer, and I have been teaching full-time for the past 35 years, and I hope to continue teaching for the next decade or so. So I teach my classes, and by the point where I have arrived at this juncture in my life, I can virtually regurgitate, all that, unless, of course, I kind of, sometimes I get excited and teach new courses, and it's a self-learning experience. I teach my classes, of course, with a lot of passion and enthusiasm, and at the same time, simultaneously, I think my circumstances permit me to kind of write full-time also. So that's how I kind of bridge the gulf between writing and I'm wrapping my mind constantly around various situations, and I'm kind of excited about a new play that I've just completed writing. It takes a lot out of working literally like 15 hours, 17 hours sometimes.
Wow.
So but I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and it's very important to enjoy, to be happy with what one does, and I'm just happy
And I can't wait to hear about your most recent play. So we'll have to have you back on the show. Thank you for being here today on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Segal.
Thank you. This is your host, Sonny Segal, signing off on the Who's Who show. I hope to see you next month at the same place and the same time.